Chapter 1. The sky shattered. A deafening roar echoed through the atmosphere, followed by a deafening silence. Major Claire Harrison stared at the jagged horizon, her eyes fixed on the dark shape that eclipsed the stars. It was impossibly large, an alien warship, drifting slowly above Earth's capital. The gravity of the moment weighed heavy on her chest, like a vice around her ribs. "Get the civilians underground," she barked, her voice cutting through the rising panic of the command center. Her orders came naturally, honed from years of training. Harrison had faced crises before: terrorist attacks, civil unrest, even the occasional rogue nuclear missile. But nothing like this. Her stomach churned with the primal certainty that this was different. A loud beep interrupted her thoughts. A message flashed across the terminal in front of her. Unidentified vessel, arrival imminent. No response to hail, ***. Open all channels, she commanded. This is Major Claire Harrison of the United Earth Coalition. We are prepared to communicate. Please respond. Her fingers drummed anxiously against the console. Silence. The weight of the uninvited guests pressed against the Earth's fragile defenses, an alien race that had given no warning, no indication of intent. Their ship hovered above the capital with a terrifying stillness, unperturbed by the chaos unfolding below. The intercom crackled to life. "Major Harrison, sir, they've started firing. The capital's defenses, they're gone. We're seeing heavy civilian casualties." A knot of frustration and fear tightened in her chest, but she didn't let it show. Harrison turned to her team, now wide-eyed and frantic. "We need to organize a counterattack. We can't let them reach the major cities. Is there any way to mobilize our forces?" A young officer, Corporal Jake Turner, looked to her, his face pale. "Major, our forces, our fleets, they're not ready. The alien have advanced far beyond our tech. We can't stop them." "Alien?" Harrison's voice was low, dangerous. She recognized the name now. A race, long rumored to exist in the farthest reaches of space. And now they were here, staring down Earth's defenses like an exterminator eyeing its prey. She could feel her heart beat harder, but her mind stayed sharp. The alien were formidable, but humanity was not without its own strengths. "We're not giving up," she growled. "Turner, rally whatever forces we have left. We fight back." "Yes, sir," Turner said, visibly shaken but nodding. His boots clicked against the steel floor as he hurried to execute the order. Claire turned back to the screen. Another blast from the alien ship rocked the Earth's atmosphere. A distant part of her mind registered that the explosions were not just physical. They were psychological, too. They were meant to show their dominance, to crush any hope before it could take root. "Dr. Solis, any updates on that weapon?" she asked, voice steady despite the gnawing uncertainty inside. On the screen in front of her, a scientist's weary face appeared. Dr. Emery Solis, a genius who had been working on developing a countermeasure for Earth's defenses. He was a man of intellect and obsession, consumed by the possibility of saving humanity, but even his genius hadn't prepared them for this level of invasion. "There's progress," Dr. Solis said, the usual certainty in his voice now a tremor of doubt. "I've developed a prototype, something that might work against their shield technology. But, Major, we're still running tests. How soon can we deploy it?" Harrison's voice was sharp, impatient. Solis hesitated. "Hours, maybe a day. It's not enough time." A deep breath. Her grip tightened on the console. The prototype wasn't going to make it in time. Harrison felt it, the crushing reality settling in. Earth had always been a resilient species. They fought, they adapted. But this was different. Her thoughts were interrupted by Turner's return. His voice broke the tension in the room. "Major, we got a plan, well, kind of. There's a civilian resistance force operating out of the ruins of Old York. They've been hitting alien supply lines sporadically, causing some problems. But they're asking for help, asking for more firepower." "Firepower, huh?" Harrison's lips twitched into a grim smile. They were asking for help, but what did they have to offer? The capital was in ruins, the military spread thin. Still, they couldn't turn their back on their own people. "All right," Harrison said, rising from her seat. Her mind raced through the possibilities. We mobilize every civilian force we can, prepare to give them everything we've got. Let's show them what humanity can do when pushed to the brink. Turner nodded, his expression now one of determination, no longer that of a frightened recruit. Understood, Major. Wait, she cut him off, her eyes narrowing. You go to the front lines with the resistance. You'll keep them alive until we can get more backup. She held his gaze firmly. Don't make me regret it. He nodded. Yes, sir. Then, with a last glance of uncertainty at the devastation unfolding on Earth, he rushed out of the room. Harrison turned back to the communication screen. Her fingers hovered above the keys. She had to send the message to the rest of the world. If humanity was going to stand a chance, they had to act now. She just hoped it wasn't already too late. Another explosion rocked the room, the tremor shaking the foundation beneath her. She slammed her fist against the console, her voice steady but filled with resolve. This is not how it ends. We fight. The alien may have arrived with fire and fury, but humanity would meet them with every ounce of its resolve. Chapter 2. The cold wind howled through the abandoned streets of Old York, cutting across the crumbling buildings that had once been a bustling metropolis. The faint, acrid scent of smoke lingered in the air, a reminder of the aliens' merciless assault. Claire Harrison's boots crunched against the frost-coated ground as she moved swiftly through the debris, her mind sharp despite the exhaustion gnawing at her. She paused for a moment, scanning the area for movement. Nothing. The streets were eerily still. It had been hours since the last skirmish, but Harrison's instincts told her that danger was always just a heartbeat away. The alien might have broken Earth's front lines, but the fight was far from over. Her comm unit buzzed in her ear. Major Harrison, this is Turner. We've located the resistance. They're ready to brief you. Understood, she replied, her voice firm. Stay sharp. I'll be there in 10. Turning down an alleyway, she found herself in front of a rusted, half-collapsed warehouse. The walls were marked with symbols of rebellion, simple but bold, etched into the remnants of the building like a battle flag. Claire could feel the weight of the struggle, the years of resistance hidden behind these walls. People had fought here, lost lives here. It wasn't just a hideout. It was a symbol of defiance. She stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, the only light coming from a few flickering lamps that cast long, distorted shadows. The resistance members moved about cautiously, their eyes darting nervously. It was a ragtag group, survivors, outcasts, civilians who'd picked up arms to protect their homes and families. They were weary, but their determination burned in their eyes. Turner stood near the center of the room, speaking with a tall man in a tattered military jacket. The man's face was hard, his jaw set, but there was a weariness in his eyes that mirrored Turner's. Major, Turner called out as he saw her approach. This is Captain Elias Ward. He's been leading the resistance here in Old York since the alien landed. Captain, Claire greeted with a curt nod. What's the situation? Ward's expression hardened. We've managed to keep them from overtaking the district, but it's only a matter of time. Our supplies are dwindling, and their forces, well, they don't tire. They're relentless. Claire's gaze drifted to the walls, lined with makeshift weapons and monitors, showing the chaos unfolding beyond the city. What's your plan? We've been hitting their supply lines, picking off small patrols. It's a slow grind, but it's worked, for now, Ward explained. We've got a couple of artillery pieces left, stolen from the remnants of Earth's military forces, but they won't hold long. We're not going to outgun the alien. What we need now is a way to make them bleed. Make them realize they can't just steamroll us. And you think we're the ones who can help with that? Harrison's tone was skeptical, but not dismissive. She wasn't sure what she expected, an organized military operation, or something more chaotic, but these people had been fighting with their backs against the wall for months. They had to have something. Ward met her gaze, eyes narrowing. You're the ones with the tech, Major. We've got the will to fight, but we don't have the resources. We know the alien are weak in certain areas, sensitive spots, if you will. If we could hit them where it hurts, disrupt their command chain, cripple their technology, we might have a chance. Harrison's mind raced. This wasn't just a matter of firefights and ambushes anymore. The Aelin had more advanced weapons, more firepower, more soldiers. Humanity's only real chance was to hit them where they weren't expecting, to exploit their weaknesses. And for that, they needed something more than just guns and bombs. "I'll see what I can do," she said after a long pause. She turned to Turner. "We need to get to the old communications hub. If we can access their network, maybe we can find some kind of vulnerability." Turner's face lit up with a flicker of hope, and he quickly gathered a few of the Resistance members to join them. Harrison led the way out of the building, her senses heightened, her hand resting on the sidearm at her hip. Every corner, every alleyway could be hiding an Aelin patrol, and every step forward felt like a gamble. As they moved through the shattered streets, the silence hung heavily. The city had once thrived with life, but now it was a graveyard of its former self. Burned-out vehicles, shattered windows, collapsed buildings. In the distance, the low hum of the Aelin's hovering ships reminded them of the ever-present threat that loomed over their heads. They reached the communications hub without incident, but as Harrison stepped inside the abandoned facility, a sense of unease prickled her skin. The interior was in disarray. Papers scattered across the floor, monitors flickering in and out of life. A far cry from the sleek, state-of-the-art facility it had once been. Harrison approached a console and quickly began working on the broken terminal. "I'm in," she said after a moment, her fingers flying over the keys. "I'll find their comms grid, but we need to work fast. If they detect us—" Her words were cut off by a loud bang outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of Aelin footsteps. Claire's heart skipped a beat. "They found us," Turner said, his voice tense. "Stay calm," Harrison ordered. "We've got one shot at this." The low rumble of a distant explosion echoed through the building, and Harrison's fingers pressed harder against the console. The tension in the room mounted with every passing second. They had to make this count, because if they didn't, humanity's fight for survival would end here. With a final click, the screen flickered to life. "We've got it," Harrison said, her voice steady despite the rising panic in the air. "Let's move." Chapter 3. The air crackled with tension as Major Claire Harrison and the Resistance group made their way to the rendezvous point. The hum of distant Aelin hovercrafts reverberated through the cracked streets, and the shadow of their invasion loomed overhead like a relentless storm. The stolen data had led them to the heart of the enemy's communications network, but now they had to act fast, before the Aelin knew they'd infiltrated the system. Claire adjusted her tactical vest, her hands steady despite the weight of the situation. Her thoughts flickered briefly to her team, Turner, Elias Ward, and the others. The faces of those who had been with her through the darkest moments flashed in her mind. But no one here had the luxury of hesitation, not when humanity's survival rested on the shoulders of people like them. "We're close," Turner whispered, breaking her reverie. His voice was tight, his face drawn with the strain of constant vigilance. Claire nodded, her eyes scanning the perimeter. The former city square, now a ruin, was eerily silent save for the wind howling through skeletal buildings. A few meters ahead, an abandoned subway in trance waited, a forgotten threshold to the bowels of the city. If they could access the underground network, they might be able to find the control hub and disable the Aelin system before they could retaliate. She motioned for Turner to lead the way. Elias Ward, ever the stoic soldier, kept a few paces behind, his eyes sharp as he scanned for any sign of movement. The subway entrance was eerily quiet, and as Claire stepped forward, her boots thudding softly against the concrete, she felt the weight of the moment settle over her. The city once stood as a beacon of human progress, a symbol of unity. Now, it was a monument to resistance, a place where every footstep could be the last. The Aelin had not only attacked Earth, they had fractured its soul, tearing apart every city they touched. But here, amidst the ruins, humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever. They descended into the darkened tunnels, the faint glow of their flashlights casting long shadows against the walls. The underground network was a labyrinth of twisting corridors, crumbling stations, and ancient machinery. It was a perfect hiding place if they could navigate it without drawing attention. "We'll have to move quickly," Claire said in a hushed voice, her breath steady but her pulse quickening. Once we're inside the control room, it's only a matter of time before the alien find us. Ward's eyes locked onto hers. We don't have the luxury of waiting for a perfect moment. We strike now. I agree, Claire said, her voice firm. She knew what needed to be done. There were no second chances left. The alien had almost crushed them, but humanity had proven time and time again that it could adapt, survive, and even thrive when backed into a corner. As they neared the control room, the silence around them grew oppressive. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Claire's hand hovered near her sidearm, ready for any movement that might betray the alien's presence. Suddenly, a series of muffled voices echoed from a nearby hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of alien boots. Claire motioned for her team to take cover. They ducked into a nearby alcove, their breath held in unison. The alien patrol passed by, their towering forms illuminated by the dim light of their wrist-mounted lanterns. Claire's grip on her weapon tightened as they moved closer, but she resisted the urge to act. Not yet. Once the patrol had moved out of sight, they continued toward the control room. They had to be close now. The walls hummed with power, and Claire could feel the hum of alien technology beneath her feet. She signaled for Turner to hack the security system. His fingers flew over a terminal, bypassing the primitive Earth defenses in record time. The screen flickered to life, revealing a mass of tangled wires and encryption codes. "I'm in," Turner whispered, his voice a breath of relief. "We got access to their network." Before Claire could respond, the lights in the hallway flickered. A sharp sound, a metallic clang, echoed from the far end of the corridor. Someone or something was coming. "Move," Claire hissed. "Now!" Turner yanked a lever on the terminal, triggering a series of rapid pulses that sent a wave of interference through the alien network. It wasn't enough to shut everything down, but it was enough to disrupt their comms for a brief moment. That window of time could mean the difference between survival and annihilation. As Claire darted toward the control room's entrance, the sound of alien footsteps grew louder. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a room filled with the whirring hum of machinery and glowing screens. The room's cold metallic walls seemed to close in around them, the air thick with the scent of burnt ozone and machinery. Claire's fingers flew over the nearby console, her mind calculating their next move as she typed in commands. "I'm going to trigger a shutdown," she said, her voice low and determined. "We got one shot at this. Just be quick," Ward warned. "The alien are right behind us." At that moment, the door to the control room slammed open. The alien were here. Claire's heart pounded in her chest. There was no turning back now. The alien soldiers poured into the room, their dark eyes glowing with predatory focus. Their massive forms filled the doorframe, their weapons raised and ready. Claire barely had time to react before the first shot rang out, a flash of light cutting through the air. "Hold them off," she yelled, her hands slamming down on the console. "Now!" Gunfire erupted around them as Ward and Turner returned fire, but Claire's focus never wavered. The countdown began, and the room seemed to spin around her. It was now or never. With one final press, she initiated the sequence. The screens around them flickered, then went black. The alien's network went silent. The silence that followed was deafening. But Claire knew this was just the beginning of the real fight. Chapter 4: The Final Stand. The screech of the metal door echoed through the control room as the alien soldiers poured inside. Their luminous eyes fixed on Claire and her team, their weapons raised in unison, the calculated precision of their movements a chilling reminder of just how close they were to extinction. Claire's heart hammered in her chest, her breath steady, but her mind racing. The network shutdown had worked, but that was only the first step. The alien would be back in force. If they didn't act fast, their victory would be short-lived. "Ward, Turner, get to the backup system," she barked, her voice tight but commanding. "Now!" Ward wasted no time, bolting to the far side of the room, his movements swift and fluid. Turner, despite his heavy breathing, was already typing commands into the nearest terminal, hacking into the emergency systems to reroute power. Claire kept her eyes on the doorway, her rifle steady in her hands as she took aim at the first alien soldier who stepped forward. The alien were methodical in their approach, their towering frames blocking the doorway, their bodies brimming with the kind of confidence that came from centuries of interstellar conquest. But Claire's team was different. They were the underdogs. They were humanity, fighting for a future that the alien had almost snuffed out. And that made all the difference. The first shot rang out, and the room erupted in chaos. Claire ducked behind the console, narrowly avoiding the blast from the alien's energy weapon. Ward and Turner returned fire, their shots lashing out in deadly precision. But the alien soldiers were relentless. One by one, they advanced, their thick armor absorbing the brunt of their opponent's fire. "Get down!" Claire shouted, pushing Turner to the ground as a burst of energy grazed his shoulder. The air around them crackled with the intensity of the assault, the ground shaking with every blast. The control room had become a war zone. Claire's mind raced. Their ammunition was limited, and the alien were too many. They had to get out of here. They had to survive long enough to trigger the backup system and send humanity's final message into the stars. "Ward!" Claire yelled over the din of the gunfire. "How much longer?" Ward's face was grim as he worked feverishly at the backup terminal, sweat dripping down his face. "It's almost ready, but we're running out of time." The alien were closing in, their boots pounding against the floor with every step. Claire knew they had no more time to waste. She couldn't risk it. Not now. Her hand gripped the detonator in her pocket, the one that would activate the bomb placed beneath the city, a last-ditch effort to cripple the alien's hold on Earth. It was a suicide move, but Claire knew that if humanity was to have any chance of survival, this was the only way. "Turner, Ward, get to the extraction point." "Now!" Claire barked. "I'll hold them off." Ward's eyes widened. "Claire, you can't." "Go." She forced her voice to stay steady, pushing him toward the exit. "That's an order." Claire was already moving, stepping toward the center of the room, her rifle raised. She wasn't about to die here in silence. Not when the world was still fighting for its freedom. Not when humanity still had the strength to resist. Turner hesitated, but Ward grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the tunnel that would lead them to the surface. Claire could hear their footsteps fade into the distance, leaving her alone in the heart of the storm. The alien didn't hesitate. The moment they saw the two soldiers leave, they turned their full attention to Claire. Their leader, a hulking figure with blood-red eyes, stepped forward, his gun aimed directly at her chest. "Human," the alien leader sneered, his voice a deep, vibrating hum. "You are brave, but foolish. You cannot win." Claire's grip tightened around her rifle, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe," she said, her voice steady, "but I'll be damned if I go down without a fight." A moment of silence passed between them. Then, with a roar, the alien leader advanced, his energy weapon crackling with lethal force. Claire fired first, her shots slicing through the air with precision. The alien leader dodged, his movements impossibly fast, but the shot grazed his arm. He snarled, his own weapon unleashing a barrage of fire. Claire dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast that singed the floor where she had been standing. Her mind raced, but her body moved instinctively. She was a soldier. She had been trained for this. The battle raged on, each moment feeling like a lifetime. The aliens' advanced technology, their overwhelming numbers, their near invincibility, they were all stacked against Claire. But humanity had something the alien couldn't replicate: heart. And Claire had an unyielding determination to survive. "Just a little longer," she muttered to herself, her mind fixated on the backup system. She didn't have much time. If she didn't keep the alien occupied long enough, the bomb would never activate. She couldn't let them win. In a flash, she vaulted over the console and sprinted to the far side of the room. The alien leader followed, his footsteps thunderous, his rage palpable. But Claire was already there, triggering the final sequence on the terminal. "Now," she whispered, and with one final push, the bomb's timer began counting down. The ground trembled beneath her as the alien leader charged, but Claire was ready. With one final defiant shout, she tossed a grenade toward him. It exploded in a burst of flame, sending the alien reeling. As Claire turned and sprinted toward the exit, she felt the first tremors of victory. The alien would never know what hit them,